everybody. This is William del Pilar. Welcome to the Cali Blitz, which is, I want to say, a lightning round, but not quite a lightning round of Fired Up California, where I take some major stories or stories that are under the radar you should be aware of, and I talk about them. Not extremely in-depth. I don't want to get into the weeds, but stories that you need to know about. Before we get going, do not forget to bookmark grumblingsmedia.com, where you can find the Cali Blitzes there. You can find Fired Up California there, as well as my Fired Up podcast, which is national issues, my Red, White, and Rude podcast, which is how culture and politics intersect, and my Points on the Board podcast, which is the intersectionality of sports and politics. grumblingsmedia.com. You can also catch us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, y Pandora under the handle Grumblings Media. And do not forget to give this show a thumbs up while you're watching. So let's get into it. California lawmakers closed the 2025 session and they passed over dozens of bills on housing, labor, and climate. And they obviously flex their partisan muscle, sidelining any dissent. They do not believe in debate. They believe in authoritarian rule. Over 1,000 bills passed, showing Democrats don't care about the constituency. They care about the lobbyists that drive and own them. For every elected politician, there are 27 lobbyists, 27-to-1 ratio, over 3,200 lobbyists for 120 politicians. Think about that. And they also push controversial policy shifts across housing, labor, and climate. So lawmakers approved a bill to fast-track housing near transit hubs. And what they did is they overrode local zoning. They took control. They don't care what the locals think. We're going to build cockroach hotels so y'all can live in little cubicles while we live in our mansions, our big homes. So again, they took over local zoning in favor of state mandates. And that's going to trigger backlash from city governments over lost autonomy, meaning, hey, this is our backyard, not yours. And their own representatives went along with it. You're going to start seeing Democrat on Democrat wars here. There was also a bill allowing striking workers to access unemployment benefits passed. Despite warnings, it will destabilize California's already debt-ridden unemployment insurance fund. So if you're on strike, you're not earning money, which means you're not paying to the system, but you're going to be able to collect unemployment. They want this so unions can go on strike and go on strike forever and keep paying their employees. This is a strategy, now a tactic, or part of their strategy that's now a tactic. So climate legislation expanded carbon reduction mandates and imposed stricter rules on oil and gas operations, prompting industry warnings of economic fallout and, yes, job loss. Democrats used procedural maneuvers to block Republican amendments and fast-track priority bills. Obviously, this is going to draw criticism for eroding legislative transparency and bipartisan process. Now, let's break some of this down. The state overreach on housing. So Sacramento's override of local zoning laws, what's that do? It strips communities of control and imposes top-down planning that ignores local realities and voter input. By top-down planning, meaning the state is taking over. As far as the bill allowing striking workers to access unemployment, well, that's union favoritism at our expense, the taxpayer. They're letting striking workers, again, tap into unemployment benefits. And that's a gift to one of their biggest benefactors, organized labor, unions. And it's a slap in the face to we, the taxpayers. We fund the system, not the unions. This is not a safety net. It's not a safety net policy. It's political payback. They're not putting into the system, but they're going to bankrupt the system because they're going to go on these long strikes, and eventually they're going. Well, let's do it this way. Why is it bad from a numbers game? So California's UI fund, it's already in the red, and it relies on federal loans to stay solvent. I guarantee you Trump's going to start cutting back on that. Now, adding voluntary strikers, imagine the chaos that's going to happen. They're going to end up raising our taxes to keep funding this. Oh, we don't have money here. We don't have money there. We don't have money anywhere. You got to raise your taxes. So employers, not unions, fund the UI system. So this policy forces businesses and taxpayers to subsidize labor disputes they didn't start. We are going to pay the price. Employers are going to fire people. They're going to be demanding, oh, yeah, you got to pay more for this. Why it goes into unemployment. So each employee I had cost me 20% more than what they were making because I had to pay into the system. This was back, and I sold the company in 2006. Who knows where it's at now? This distorts the risk model of unemployment insurance. And that was built for involuntary job loss, not strategic walkouts. This is the type of stuff that anywhere in back 200 years ago would create a revolution in the country of the French Revolution type. But not now, not in our over-civilized world. They can do this, and do this. And we have no option. So what happens? We flee the state. Did you know that at one time, and they're still trying it, they keep trying to tax you. Well, if you leave us, you still owe this, and this. That's what California does. Strikes are going to be used as ideological weapons. With state-funded benefits, unions can strike with impunity. Even without urgent grievances, they can use walkouts to push their ideological demands. DEI. Only black, brown. Why? Because the Anglos in charge don't care. They're not going to be affected. And my point isn't the damn minorities. I am a minority. It's equality is what this country is about. Meritocracy is what we're about. So they're going to push ideological demands, internal agendas, and who knows what else. And this shifts labor disputes from negotiation to coercion. This is where unions gain asymmetric power. And that power is going to reshape business operations under threat of prolonged state-backed disruption. And what it's going to do is some of the bigger companies say, we're just not going to do business here. Period. End of story. Smaller businesses are going to go under. Then you have climate mandates with no guardrails. So the new climate rules punish energy producers without offering viable alternatives. It's economic self-sabotage dressed up as environmental virtue. Let me give you an example here. So imagine forcing truckers to switch to electric rigs overnight without building charging stations or fixing the grid. That's what California is doing to energy producers. They're demanding transformation without infrastructure, then blaming them when the lights flicker. Then the procedural hypocrisy, Democrats decry threats to democracy. Yet they ran bills through without debate. They block opposition input, and they weaponize the process to silence dissent. Transparency only matters when it serves a narrative. So to give you an example, April 2025, Democrats quietly moved 33 bills into the suspense file. They did that in 24 minutes. No debate, no vote. That's where bills go to die or go to be hidden to be brought up when it's more politically conducive. One was a GOP bill requiring safeguards before placing sexually violent predators into neighborhoods. See, people, they don't care about you. They don't care about your daughter getting raped brutally. This is my issue with libertarians too. Well, freedom of speech, American this, anarchy. They don't care until it happens to them. Whether it's in the court system, they get railroaded. Then all of a sudden they become conservative. Or when they get mugged or somebody gets killed, and all of a sudden the conservative values spew out of them faster than someone with diarrhea. They kill this in secret, and then they fast-track Democrat bills. So they preach democracy, then protect predators over families and silence dissent. That's what your California legislature with a 27-to-1 ratio of lobbyist to elected official is doing and has done. All right. So let's get to California's bill targets mass law enforcement amid accusation of secret police tactics. In other words, they're legally saying you have to unmask. So Senate Bill 627 criminalizes mass law enforcement operations in California. They're saying it's public fear and lack of accountability. Bull! California's legislature advanced a bill that bans law enforcement from wearing face-covering masks during operations. It's specifically geared towards the feds and ICE. And it obviously triggered backlash over officer safety and political motives. Why? They wanted to pass a law where they could do the opposite and be masked or not give their identities or some nonsense like that. So SB 627, authored by obviously Scott the Man Wiener. That man does love wieners. And it prohibits law enforcement from wearing full face masks unless medically or environmentally necessary. So the bill applies to local, state, and federal officers. They can do local, they can do state, but they're going to get pushback. They can say they can do federal officers, but it's not going to work. It's directed. This is all directed towards ICE, and it's hidden by using their local and state law enforcement as, oh, we're doing it across the board. So they're screwing their own protectors, who they hate anyway, and they're going to impose fines or misdemeanor charges for violations. So you give me a cop doing your job and go to jail because you don't want the Antifa or the protesters to know who you are. Now, Wiener claims the bill responds to rising fascism. See, fascism again. Wiener is a fascist. This is a man who went to the San Francisco Pride Parade where they were having oral sex in public and then urinating on one another and stating it's good for kids. Bring your kids. He says he aims to prevent mass officers from conducting unmarked detentions reminiscent of authoritarian regimes. You mean like Newsom did? Arresting us during times of COVID? Nobody around? No, you can't. You don't have a mask on. Now they want us to unmask. So MalDef is a left-wing advocacy group. It's backed by Ford Foundation and Soros-linked entities. We need to have a boycott of Ford. They sponsored the bill. They're framing it as a civil rights measure to protect Latino communities. Stop protecting us. You're killing us. Now, federal supremacy blocks state enforcement. The federal supremacy clause under Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, federal law supersedes state law, period, end of story. California can't criminalize or restrict federal agents performing duties authorized by federal law. So while the bill includes federal officers, it can't override federal jurisdiction or internal agency protocols. So this is garbage. So they screwed over all state and local law enforcement to tell their people, yeah, we're going to be dealing with those ICE people. You illegals, you illegals who like at the Park Farm were filled with sexual predators and you had underage kids. Yeah, we're going to protect y'all. ICE agents operating under federal authority are not subject to California's criminal penalties. The state can't prosecute or fine them for wearing masks during federal operations. This is nothing but political theater. Classic example of legislative posturing. California signaling defiance against federal immigration enforcement, knowing full well it lacks the teeth to do so. SB 627 isn't about transparency. It's a calculated move to try to kneecap federal immigration enforcement, especially ICE, under the guise of civil rights. And it's also a lie meant to get you to think, oh, they're doing this to help us protect us. No, they know it can't happen. So they're lying to you. Now, the officer safety is ignored. Assaults on ICE agents have surged over 400%. So masking protects the officers and their families from doxing and retaliation. Stripping that protection is politically motivated, and they want it done. They want these officers doxed. Now, these same lawmakers who mandated masks for civilians during COVID, even outdoors, they're now criminalizing them for law enforcement. Think about that. Masks are essential for public health, but fascists were worn by officers. Selective outrage. California protects mass Antifa rioters who intimidate and destroy property, yet they punish the federal agents for anonymity during lawful enforcement. You know, it's funny. Once they're unmasked, they turn into blubbering little prima donna, white bread, upper class suburban kids, if not rich. You keep them the mask on and they have their weapons, they're protected. They don't care. If we truly fought back, we wipe out Antifa. BLM would have been wiped out, all of that. But we're not. We abide by the law. But they lie to you and saying our law enforcement does not when they do. Branding ICE as secret police weaponizes language to delegitimize lawful enforcement. This isn't policy, it's optics. And it's fear-mongering to advance a progressive agenda. All right, let's close this out. The Supreme Court reinstates ICE authority in LA after an activist leftist swine of a judge banned it on indiscriminate immigration stops. So the Supreme Court overturned a federal judge's restraining order that limited ICE operations in LA. Now, there were some mistakes done. A couple of U.S. citizens were mistakenly detained and then released. We're humans. We're not perfect. We have to have checks and balances, and that's how we got this taken care of right away. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court cleared the way for federal immigration agents to resume broad enforcement tactics in LA, reversing restrictions imposed after constitutional violations were alleged. They were lied. They were lying. Now, the three were leftist swines themselves. Now, they did not give Kavanaugh protection on purpose because I believe the Biden regime wanted Kavanaugh eliminated. And the DOJ refused to provide him protection. I'm sure if that happened to one of those three voting against this, they change their mind. Until it happens to them, they don't care. But they have protection. U.S. District Judge Mom Frimpong, a bigot, had barred ICE agents from stopping individuals based on race, language, job, or location, citing a mountain of evidence of constitutional violations. Now, when y'all hear me calling them bigots or swines, it's because I've researched them and I see their decision after decision after decision is activists. It's based off of ideology. And there's some lawyers I follow, and they point out legally why it's a nonsense and why it will be overturned, and it is. It's literally everything that Trump's been stopped at is based off of ideology, not actual law. That's why so many of his decisions or of these activist judges' decisions get overturned. The restraining order followed incidents where U.S. citizens were swept up in immigration raids. I know an immigrant with a green card. He doesn't run when all this happens. He just shows them the card, and they let him go. So the Supreme Court ruled the order improperly restricted federal enforcement authority. DHS attorneys argue successfully agents target illegal presence, not race or ethnicity. Now, those who support unlawful order, who support crime, who support rapists, who support thieves, who support illegal immigrants, they accuse the Trump administration of systemic racial profiling. I don't care. That's part of law enforcement. That's part of marketing. You look at the data. Now, you have to have checks and balances in place so it doesn't become racial profiling only. But they don't want to work like that. They want to completely allow criminals. And we see the result. Rapes, murders, young women, 11, 12-year-olds, bludgeoned in the head, boom, with stone, smashed over their heads. Kids, sex trafficking rings broken up. So, expect this to resume aggressively again. So, to me, immigration enforcement is a federal duty. We want law and order. I've seen what happens when you have no law and order or it's corrupt law and order like the Democrats did during COVID. Local judges don't get to override national authority because they disagree with the policy's outcomes. They're supposed to judge by the legalese of it all, and they don't. And mistakes don't justify handcuffing enforcement. So what they did was a mistake, but the solution is better targeting, not neutering ICE. And they know this. They want to stop it because they're okay with rapists, thugs, criminals, burglars, pedophiles. They're okay with them on the street. The Constitution doesn't require paralysis. LA County has over 1 million illegal aliens. They're taking our jobs. If we had those jobs, we would get paid more. And when I say we, I'm talking about the young. That's where they learn responsibility and accountability. Instead, they give the job to illegals who get paid under the table at a much lower wage. You go to where these people live. I have been there. They're hellholes. They're bleep holes. And then they don't send, their tax money doesn't stay here. They send it through Western Union back to their country of origin. They keep enough to live. And the taxes that most people say they pay taxes. Yeah, when they buy milk, when they buy this, when they buy that, they're not being, hey, I don't need to see a green card or this or that. So they're buying it. So they pay taxes that way. And the few that pay into the actual tax system, those are stolen Social Security cards. This is an ideological weapon they use the activist judges for. They use isolated incidents to push their broader ideological goals, turning enforcement into a racial narrative. And they leverage their activist courts to block federal authority. So this ruling exposes how legal activism weaponizes. It weaponizes to stop our law enforcement process. Imagine if a city banned FBI agents from investigating bank fraud because one case involved mistaken identity. That's what LA has tried to do with ICE, block federal law enforcement over isolated errors. So the restraining order wasn't about civil rights, it was about optics. Actually, it wasn't even about optics. It was about destroying our law and order. And the Supreme Court saw through the framing and restored constitutional order. That's our show. Let me show you something here before you go. This is California, my friends. This is a shirt we have on sale. We finally have a store and we have some swag there. To my Latino brethren and to my Anglo brethren, to my white brethren, to my Asiatic brethren. Asiatic, that's a Spanish term for Asian. You can support our all-volunteer cause by helping and checking out our store. This shirt here is ¿Quién es el más macho? El presidente es el más macho, Presidente Trump. I like it's a fun shirt. You know, buy it and show me your swag. Send us a picture. We'll post it and we'll showcase it in our podcast. But you can check that out with the QR code or go straight to grumblingsmedia.com, our store. And then my other one. This was my other favorite. This is my mug. It's a big mug. Look at that. Covers up my head. 15 ounces. Again, you can check that out at grumblingsmedia.com or swipe the QR code. And that's our show, my friends. That is our show. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you like and share this short podcast. Make sure you bookmark grumblingsmedia.com. Make sure you check out our swag there. And you can follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify, y Pandora under the handle Grumblings Media. I am William del Pilar. This has been the Cali Blitz, an extension of Fired Up California. Until next week, my friends, stay safe. And I will see you then. I am William del Pilar for the Cali Blitz, and I am out.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.